Hey guys, welcome to the show. Right now it's called a line vibe flow, and that encompasses what we talk about, but I'm fixing to change the name to something more SEO friendly so we can better portray what we do over here. Our main focus is for neurodivergence with anxiety. And we come at that from a very spiritual, personal development, little bit of woo woo type of direction. So if you're into all of that and that sounds like you're in the right place. Again, I don't know what I'm going to change the name to yet. Right now, the top contenders are How to Human and Learn How to Chill. We really want the words learn or how to or learn how to because that's what we do. We teach over here, and that's what people are looking for when they put it in the search bar. So if you have an opinion on that, or if you want to vote, or if you want to pitch your title, just, let me know some way. There's not really a comment section on Spotify or Apple Podcasts where is there on, I'm an Android person, so I don't really know anything about Apple stuff, but I have a Facebook group, so you can come in a Patreon. Or you can head over to the website and email me. Whatever works for you works for me. I'm really not picky. I am wholly just happy to hear from you, always. Anyway, moving on to today's episode, which is for people with neurodivergencies or learning disabilities or people who have those types of people in their life and you're looking to help them, support them, whatever, maybe understand them a little bit better. We definitely covered how to help and support your loved ones who have these struggles, because people with these struggles do struggle a lot in our world that is built for the majority and not the minority. And it is getting better. We are progressing. The internet's helped a lot. The neurodivergent community has done a lot to bring attention to these things over the past few years, but it can still be very isolating for someone experiencing these struggles. We don't really know how to connect with a lot of people. We can be really lonely. We can be ostracized from the majority. So fitting in is, hard anyway, but when there's a stigma, and we covered that in this episode and how to kind of break that stigma and how to approach that, as well as various educational options, because a lot of people with learning disabilities find a formal education, really difficult, and there's all these programs to help with that, but there's problems in and of those and people's, again, stigma. Anyway, we covered a lot, and if this sounds like something you are interested in and you feel like you're in the right place, let's just hit the ground running from here. All right, Michelle Steiner, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us tonight. Why don't you go ahead and take a second and introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're all about?
Sure. My name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband Ron and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I work as a teacher's aide in a school with students who have disabilities and some who don't. I am also a writer, speaker, and photographer, and I have a blog called Michelle's Mission where I write about life with a disability, and I also feature my photography, and I have a learning disability myself.
Awesome. Well, I am so glad to talk to you about this because I these types of things are heavily present in my own life.
Mhm.
Um, my godson lives with us. His mother does too. We don't have custody of him or anything, but
Mhm.
he is autistic and dyslexic and who knows what else, because he was
Mhm.
mostly nonverbal, and he's 10, and he was mostly nonverbal until a few years ago. And myself, we've always known that I was some kind of neurodivergent. We
Mhm.
didn't know what kind until recently, and I'm in my 30s, so living with that your whole life is weird and a whole topic in and of itself. I've never been officially diagnosed with anything, but we're pretty sure we know what's going on with me now. But we had talked about the stigma behind disabilities. And so I experience it all the time, the stigma between how people talk about my godson and interact with him, and how they talk to and interact with myself. And it's, gosh, what a topic.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, how the stigma that surrounds that. And when you talk about not knowing until you're in your 30s, it's the opposite for me. I grew up knowing that I had a learning disability. I was diagnosed with one when I was in kindergarten. So having one is just like a way of life for me. And yeah, I've definitely grown up a lot with the stigma of that carries.
I saw one of your podcast episodes that you did. I'm a piece of it, and I don't remember. I
Mhm.
wish I had taken better notes on that. You talking about being kind of sectioned off from most of the
Mhm.
children, and how they wouldn't uh, hang out with you and include you with their happenings because they see
Mhm.
you as different. And that's so sad. I think it's getting better in the school system. Maybe
Mhm.
it seems to be getting better with my godson anyway. He's not subject to that, which I'm thankful for, because I did see
Good.
myself in when I was in school.
Right. Yeah, because I can remember I had to go to learning support, which was fine because that's definitely what I needed to have, and accommodations of having a test read aloud to me and extra time on tests. But the hard part about that was I went to a very small school district where everybody knew everybody's business, and I couldn't blend in. And if you weren't one of them, it was a close-knit community if you fit in, but if you weren't one of them, you definitely just weren't a part of a lot of that stuff. And whenever I was really young, it was okay, you're not invited, excuse me, to my birthday party, or you can't play on the playground with me. But when I got older, it got even more difficult. I can remember the peer groups became more defined, and I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere with a lot of them. So, what I did is I started to seek outside of my school district for interests. I found a an art program that was a school district away, very nearby, but these were kids that I didn't go to school with. And just having that, I was able to shed that reputation of being the outcast. And I found acceptance, and that made it a lot easier. And then when I got a little older, I started to find a group of people that were just a couple years older than I was, and they were in an adult writing group. And I started hanging out with them. And that even made it a lot better, too. I mean, they got to see me grow as a writer and a person, and I brought my stories to share. And they encouraged me to write about having a learning disability. And at that time, I'm like, oh no, that's too personal. So I wrote some bad poetry. To this day, we still meet once a month to talk about our writing, 20 some years later,
Wow.
and we're in each other's lives, uh, with birthday parties and gatherings and weddings, and some of the sad stuff too. We've had some funerals and some other sad things, but just all those everyday parts of life that they're a part of. And that really helped me out because I didn't have very much connections with a lot of the people that I went to high school with. So, but that just led me to go out and find my tribe.
And about how old were you when you found them? When this
I
started?
had to be about 17, maybe going on 18. Yeah.
I can relate to a lot of that. I also
Mhm.
grew up in a very small town where everybody knows everybody and their mom and their aunt and uncles and cousins. And my graduating class that I went K through 12 with was like 60 people. And
Wow. Oh my
very small town.
goodness.
Very small town. The road, I've lived in the same 5 mile radius my entire life. The road
Hmm.
I live on now, I'm related to probably three or four people on it. And then I went to school with like five or six people on it. And then there's a couple that my husband went to school with, and he didn't go to my school. He just went to like the next school zone over. And so
Uh-huh.
I get the small town thing and how it is so isolating if you don't fit into that any particular group. It's lonely. It is incredibly lonely. And it was when luckily we have we call it tech school. So all of the schools in the county there's a tech school, and
Right.
this tech, for people who aren't familiar with it, in high school you can choose to go to take classes at the tech school, and the
Hmm.
bus takes you from your home school to the tech school for half the day, and there you're learning stuff like carpentry or welding or nursing, culinary arts. I took culinary arts the first year because the
Hmm.
program was only for 11th and 12th graders, and you could start going when you were in 10th grade. And I was like, get me out of here, please. And so that's when things started opening up to me, when I also was able to shed that reputation of, because people in a small town don't have to get to know you in order to know
Right.
who you are. They quote unquote already know who you are just by reputation. But when you get out into the real world and you meet people that aren't familiar with your history and your background and your family and who's who, they have to actually talk to you to figure out
Yep.
who you are. And then once they do that, that's when things started opening up for me too, because I was so lonely into my 20s, mid 20s at least, could not connect with anybody, find anybody. It's a big reason why I do a podcast, because most of the people I found that I'm able to connect with are into
Hmm.
doing podcasts. You know,
Right,
we
right.
read books and we're interested in discussing thoughts and philosophies and stuff like that. So yeah, getting out
Yeah, awesome.
a lot.
Yes, that is awesome. Yes, our school has the same program with the technical, yeah, vocational school. In fact, I had a teacher who thought, "Oh, you should do that because you can't go to college." And I'm not against
How
VOTEC. I think it's a
presumptuous.
great program, but they didn't have anything that interested me personally. If they would have had an early childhood program, I definitely would have gone to that. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for students to go in there and they get to meet other people from different school districts. I think that's another really positive thing too.
Yeah, isn't it? Man, I hate that the school system is so limiting in what it
Hmm.
provides for the students. And the book I'm
Right.
reading right now is explaining just exactly this. I've been
Oh,
really into unschooling recently,
uh-huh.
and we've had to take my my son doesn't do well in traditional school,
Hmm.
also different like us.
Yeah.
So we've had to take the idea of homeschooling him pretty seriously.
Okay.
We're not at the point yet to where I think
Hmm.
we're trying to make it work with the public school system. But
Right.
anyway, so I'm researching and making sure I have
Hmm.
ducks in a row in case we do have to homeschool him. And the book I'm reading right now is talking about how traditional public school is so limiting that they cut out recess, which is the most important thing for children to
Hmm.
be able to learn anything, the social
Right.
um, and the subjects that they do cover aren't very broad because they can't be, because they're having to
Mhm.
so many children across the board and make
Right.
all of these standardized tests, which also are very problematic
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And by chance, if a child does find something that they're interested in, the teacher's kind of like, okay, well, that's great, but we can't focus on that. We have to keep moving. And so many of us, at we're expected to know what we want to do at like 18.
Right.
When we go, look, we're supposed to choose a college and a degree.
Hmm.
We have no idea, especially with the school system set up the way it is. We have no idea what the possibilities are that are available for us to even choose from. And then, even if you're looking at your local community college or even going off to college, your choices are very limited in what you have. What, like, what, how did you come about falling into the degree, like what you do?
Right. I knew that I wanted to go to college and I knew that I wanted to work with kids. but I didn't think that I could definitely, I knew I couldn't be a certified teacher. That would be, I'm not a great test taker. And just some of the content they covered with math, I knew I couldn't do it. So what I did is I did a lot of research. I got connected with Office for Vocational Rehabilitation, and they suggested that, okay, community college is a great thing. You maybe study early childhood education. And I thought, okay, that's definitely something I would consider. I also talked to some business schools that came around, but it just wasn't, they didn't have anything that really interested me. And my guidance counselor also suggested going to a college fair for students who had disabilities. And they had all the different colleges across Pennsylvania that had programs that disability accommodations. And I got a chance to walk around at that fair and be able to talk to some of them. And I like certain programs. I was really glad though that my parents said, you know how much this cost? And because that really was an eye opener. I didn't know whenever I was that young. And I was able to go to community college. I had Office for Vocational Rehabilitation that paid for that, and they paid for university as well. And they had disability accommodations on campus, and they had a program that interested me. But there was still a stigma that was definitely attached to it when I went there. I can remember people saying that using accommodations was cheating and giving you an unfair advantage, and you don't want to box yourself into a category. So I didn't use them, and my grades suffered. I also had a psychiatrist when I had to get the testing to get the accommodations that told me that because my test scores were so low, I would most likely not go beyond a community college. And I had a professor who told me I was going to have limited job choices. So I was pretty negative for a lot of those years. And I was able to graduate. And I did end up finding a program at university because it took me a little while. I was on my own for a bit, and then I had to move back in with my parents. And then I found the perfect program. It was community programming for Americans with disabilities, which is the service end of working with people with disabilities, not the teaching end. And they had disability accommodations, and I went out and I used them. And I think it was a lot of research because that's what I needed to do. I needed to research and find a program that wasn't going to have a lot of math and science,
Mm.
and something that was of interest to me. Because if I got into something and I didn't have any interest in it, I certainly wasn't going to put my heart into it, and I wasn't going to do it as well. Even though people would think that that would be easy, for me, that would be harder. And that's really what I encourage people to do that have disabilities and they want to go to school or they want to have a job, is to just look at the options and research what's out there and take a hard look at yourself. If you're, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? And just see the programs. I had a student today that said, I really should go to college. I guess I have to go to college. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to have my own bakery. And we said, well, that would be a good idea. So you have some business courses. But I said, you don't have to go to college. It might be good for you to go to the VOTEC and see what your options are. College is great, but just to see what options you have, and to be able to research that. Because I don't want to be the teacher that's saying, well, you can't go to college because you have a disability, or you have to go to college, or you have to go to a tech school. There's a lot of opportunities that are out there. It's just trying to guide our students into what the resources are available.
Yeah, and it's frustrating that you have to do a lot of research
Mm-hmm.
on these things, but that is the truth of the matter. You don't know until you really dive deep into what's available, not
Yeah,
only just in your area, because there's a lot of like, and I don't know the extent of what's available in my area, but
right.
I would imagine that from the outsider, but not too
Mm-hmm.
outside point of view that I have, there's not as much as there would be in like, because we're very rural where I live. I'm in
Right.
the boondocks of
Yeah.
Alabama. So
Yeah, exactly. But it's looking maybe outside of your area as far as maybe you become, if you will be comfortable in looking outside too. You might find something that might be close by or far away or and I think it's also good to even Google things too, because even if the way everything is now, if you don't want to leave your house, you can access courses and do a lot outside of that too. So it's just knowing and looking and yeah, finding what works.
Yes, the internet. I praise the internet all the time. Like, sure, it has its downfalls in some areas and whatnot, but it's a
Yeah,
tool like anything else. Just like any kind of tool can be used for good or bad, and the internet
exactly.
also is the same. And it's so nice that we do have more available now than we did even
Yes.
20 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
getting more accessible, and that's great. And people are learning to like how to interact with people who are different. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Einstein, who said that if you judge a fish by its ability, if you judge a fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's subpar, and that's the same thing here. My godson, for example, he's had
Mm-hmm.
lots of struggles, and there for a long time the school system treated him like he couldn't handle anything, even though we at home knew that he could if you just it was a little bit more flexible and you explain things a little bit differently than you would normal. Well, I say normal, I don't like that word.
Right.
The average person. And now the school system, since they've gotten accustomed to him and familiar with him, they're starting
Mm-hmm.
to see, oh, okay, this kid is just as intelligent as all of the others around him. He just learns differently. He processes things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Bless his heart, he can't read. But that's about it. He's great in all of his own ways. And who are we? Who is the system to try to tell us that we're subpar because we can't do the things that the normal, again, I'm using that word. It's a terrible
Mm-hmm.
word because what is normal? Nothing is normal.
Yes.
Normal. Everything's in its own category, and it's only a societal construct that we've created all of these boxes and that we've said these boxes are normal and these boxes are not, and that's not true. Language. And each and every one, the school system needs to be more flexible. Humanity and culture and society itself needs to be more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
We're
I
slowly
agree.
working on that through media representation is the best thing that we could do for this.
I agree 100% because we do need to focus a lot on the strengths that we have of our students. I think that's so important. For example, if you give me math, I still cannot do math today. I have made my peace with that. In fact, my students know or they will find out that I cannot help them with math. And if you base that upon my intelligence is okay, you give me math and you say, oh, well, you're not very smart because you can't do math, I'll spend the rest of my life feeling really not very smart. But if you focus on what I can do, if you give me reading, if you give me writing, or you give me a chance to show them how to do spelling words or even just like communicating, those are things I'm really good at. And I find when I focus on those things, I feel so much more empowered than when I start to focus on the things I can't do.
Yes, you have to explore all the categories. I also cannot do,
Mm-hmm.
and I struggled with that a long, long time. I cheated my way through school. I sure did because there was nothing else I could do. And I had tutors and I had
Mm-hmm.
the extra help in which again, I flew under the radar as most
Right.
as most females do. Most girls do fly under the radar with things like this because we're good at the socializing aspect. I'm not good at
Uh-huh.
the socializing aspect, but we at the same time we can kind of like gauge better what's
Mm-hmm.
expected of us with
Right.
math.
And I also think sometimes they think too that girls generally aren't great at math and guys are better at that. And girls are more into reading and sometimes can be quieter. So we don't, a lot of those things do fall under the radar. I was really lucky that mine stuck out like a sore thumb from the very beginning. I was frustrated and it showed. But I agree. A lot of times we don't think the girls can do that. And when we're also talking about math, that's not the category that's most discriminated against. It's Asian Americans or Asians because everybody thinks, oh, you're Asian, you must be great at math, you must excel at that. And the truth is, a lot of people that are great at it, but some it's a lot of times it's a lot of hard work and it's a lot of ability and skill. And we'll get somebody that'll come in and they'll be Asian and we'll think, well, you can't possibly have dyscalculia, and they don't get the help that they need. So I think a lot of times that's why I try to go and talk about learning disabilities, because a lot of times people think about dyslexia, and that definitely is a real disability, and reading is important, but we don't know what dyscalculia is. A lot of people think, oh, do you read numbers backwards? And I'm like, no, that's not it at all. And I get to explain that I have difficulty with how numbers work and directions and processing and things like reading the face of a clock. I mean, and I think it's just sharing a lot of that information gives a reality on what learning disabilities are, at least with my experience.
Yeah, I've always explained it like math, because man, my whole life I've fought about this with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like my caregivers, especially, like, how can you not just, and I'm like, I don't know, okay? It's
Yep, exactly.
math is a language that I do not
Yep,
speak.
same
And
here.
put it all up there, and I don't know what's left or what's right. I don't really know. If you gave me a formula and you gave me a problem that plugged effortlessly into the formula, I could do that. But
Yes,
that's about it. If you gave me and you're like, here's a problem, here's a math problem, and here's the formula to solve it, but you have to rearrange some things, and no, I'm done. I'm gone. Sorry, can't.
yeah,
It's not from lack of trying.
exactly.
It just doesn't. It's we might as well be speaking Russian. We're not even using the same alphabet. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I mean, people would say, why can't you just do a calculator? Or a calculator is cheating. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, even when I use a calculator, I can't, it's little help. Okay, obviously, if it's some really simple math, okay, I can plug that in because I don't have all my facts memorized. But I I get lost in the steps and I can still get it wrong with the calculator.
Mhm.
And I can remember I couldn't even pass the basic math or the pre-math when I was at community college. And I was able to get a waiver for that because I had disability. There was definitely the paper trail the with the accommodate with the testing and the services on campus. And I was doing tutoring and I was able to get that class waived, and I took a film analysis class as a substitution. That was one of the things we used. And when I was at university, they told me, oh, we don't do waivers. But I had an option of taking a philosophy based math course or an algebra one.
Oh,
And the teacher there was amazing. He knew I was trying my best and it was so hard. And all I needed was a D to pass. And I had the revelation of to take this class because I did a lot of the research, like, okay, what can I do? What is going to be the best choice for me? And I can remember I was sitting somewhere and there was somebody was having someone invited me to play a chess game. And it was the shortest chess game in history. And I explained to the person that I had a math learning disability and I was trying to think of what math course to take, whether I want to take the logic or the algebra. And he goes, well, I'm from the math department and people in my department aren't very nice. So I'd highly suggest that you take the logics class. And it worked for me. And I was able to graduate. I mean, but it was hard.
mm. Yeah, I was math is exactly why I did not finish college. I
Mhm.
took the same math class 3 times and failed it 3 times before
Yep.
finally I was allowed to just drop out. But I never wanted to go to college. I was like, school in and of itself for me, I've learned, and I tell people this all the time, I've learned 1,000 times more since I've
Hmm.
been outside of the school system than I ever did in the school system. In the school system was just a complete and utter waste of time for me. I did not learn a
Hmm.
thing. I did not walk away with any sort of benefits from that, other than because I carried notebooks around with me 24/7,
Hmm.
and I was just doodling my thoughts in them all of the time. And sometimes those were quotes that just popped in my head. Sometimes they were doodles. Sometimes they were
Hmm.
stories. Sometimes they were poems. And the only thing I probably can say that I walked away from the school system with was encouragement to keep writing, because
Awesome.
I had my English and literature teachers, they would assign us something, and
Hmm.
I would turn something in and they would call me over to their desk to discuss it. And they would be like, Savannah, this is never stop doing this. I'm like, well, thank you. And then I would have, kids steal your things just because that's what kids do, and they may be trying to pick on you when they do that, and they may just be doing
Hmm.
things and you just really don't know. And they would steal my notebooks, and then they would like flip through them and start reading them, and they'd be like, hold on, wait a second, hold on, I'm just gonna keep reading this, okay? Like, and then they'd read more, and then they'd be like, okay, let me know. And I literally had before the internet was a thing, before blogs thing, I had what you would probably consider subscribers in my home school
Awesome.
that when I wrote something new, they would line up and they would just pass it around. That's exactly what I ended up doing, because what this is STEM.
Uh-huh.
My blog, as soon as the internet became a thing and MySpace became a thing, I immediately
Right.
I had my own website, and well, MySpace turned into my own website site over the turned into this podcast. So, you know, that's the only thing I took from the school system. It was terrible for
Yeah, but that's great. Yeah, you definitely had your resources and you were ahead of your time. That's awesome.
yeah. Do you think that the lack of math abilities has increased our ability with words?
Yes, because for what I can't do in math, I'm able to do like with words and like with writing and be able to focus in on a lot of that. So I think that helps out too. In
Mhm.
fact, when I was in that logics class, my professor told me that I wasn't a great writer. We didn't do much writing in that class. We did a lot of formulas and
How would they know?
fallacies and yeah, so we weren't doing a lot of that. I don't know exactly, unless he was talking about my handwriting, which that's in a whole nother issue. It's not that great. But he told me, and he wasn't the first that said I was a bad writer. And he said, you're really good with talking. And I can remember him asking me, well, how are the rest of your grades? When I looked at my grades, I had A's in everything else except for his class. And if I didn't have that terrible grade, I would have had a 4.0. And it just, after I took the class, though, this was really interesting. All my other grades the next semester shot up and I made Dean's List. But they all shot up in the other areas, but I couldn't do the math.
Mhm.
It improved every other area except for the math where I needed it. But really, I mean, what I can't do with numbers, I can compensate for with words or even taking pictures. People think, well, how can you take pictures if you have visual perception issues? I mean, it's in my brain, not in my eyes. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just one of those things I'm able to do. And you have to have that eye for it and be able to have that. So just sometimes it's amazing when there's one thing that you can't do or your brain's not as strong or doesn't work as well in one area, that there's another one that makes it stronger.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing where blind people's hearing enhances, right? Or deaf
Mm-hmm.
people's sight enhances. You know,
Right.
your body. our body's made for survival, and it's all wiring. And if you,
Mm-hmm.
it's a use it or lose it type of situation. And if your body knows if you're not capable of making the wiring connections over here
Mm-hmm.
for this one thing, it's going to compensate over here with this other thing. So, it's self-exploration. You just have to really do that. And
Mm-hmm.
some that's easier for some of us than others, and some of us are more interested in the personal development stuff, so it's easy to explore
Mm-hmm.
who we are and how we are and why we are the way we are, and
Yes.
which is exactly what got me here. I obsessed my entire life of just it just completely consumed me 24/7 for 30 years. Why am I not like everybody else? And we all
Mm-hmm.
knew I wasn't, but you didn't really get tested for things back in the day unless it was like really problematic. And again, I was really good at flying under the radar for things. So,
Right, exactly. I always find it fascinating just how the brain works and just, yeah. I found out a lot about when I went to university for developmental psychology, and then some of my professors when I was in the my major, just what how learning disabilities were, and that just helped me to understand myself and to be able to understand my students a lot better.
yeah. And then, because that's exactly what most of us are interested in, is
Hmm.
finding out more about ourselves. So,
Yeah,
how we end up in these careers that
yeah.
are so specific, like yours or mine. And it's because we've tried to figure out our own problems. And once we get to this certain level of understanding,
Hmm.
then we're able to turn around to the generations behind us
Yeah.
and help them along the way too, which is so beautiful to be able to have a mentor. And I wish that I had been diagnosed at a younger age just so I could not spend so much time wasted wondering what's quote unquote wrong with me. And
Right.
instead just be like, oh, because as soon as like we put two and two together, it's just like everything fell into place, and everything, just all the tension in my body melted. And it was like, oh, okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just
Right.
this. It's fine. There's a whole group of people that are just like this. So now I
Yep.
can hang out with them and talk to them and understand them. And it helps me
Hmm.
myself better. And it helps me not feel so alone. And so just, I don't know, trapped by society and what it wants.
Yes.
Because I can't do what society wants me to do. I can't be who society wants me to be, no matter how hard I tried, because I tried very hard for a very long time.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you too. I can remember motivational speakers would come. You can do anything you put your mind to. And I would think, okay, this is the year I'm going to get math or I'm going to be popular. And I would try all those things and it wouldn't work. And then I would be really discouraged. And I had to learn that maybe there's just certain things I can't do no matter how hard I try or what I want. But I focus on what I can do. And that is just always so much more better for me to do that.
Yeah, it's the external comparison
Hmm.
we let go of when we
Right.
finally, my power's flickering, so
Okay. Okay. No, no, that's fine. I hear you.
just, we'll go until it makes us stop, but just letting you know that that is happening. Um, but it's mostly the external comparison that society and culture and the school system and your family and the people,
Hmm.
like whoever, all the people, they're like, here's how you're supposed to be. And if you don't fit into these boxes, then there's something wrong with you. So then you're
Right.
I'm even I don't really like the word disability. Like I understand it as a
Hmm.
umbrella term. It's kind of needed a little bit, but I think we could probably find a better word, because there's nothing just because we don't fit into society the way society has
Hmm.
constructed people and says they're supposed to fit into it in this way doesn't mean that um there's you know,
Right. There's something wrong with you or something with that. You might have where your disability is maybe like a small percentage of the problem, and it's just having those barriers in the community or just having people's attitudes is sometimes what really is the true uh, disabling factor, not what you have, because you learn how to deal with a lot of things. You learn, and I think it's just having that support, but it's also just how other people are. That sometimes that is the hardest thing.
it really is because most of our comparisons are based off of other people,
Hmm.
what they say we
Yep.
should be. And if we just let go of that, which is hard,
Hmm.
relationships, there's nothing more important in our life than our relationships. So if you're,
Right.
for example, when, again, I've never been officially diagnosed, which is why I'm hesitant to claim any titles. But I've
Hmm.
taken test after test after test online, and not tests that are just like this quiz here, but like from universities. And then
Hmm.
that came up, yes. And then I had like when I started telling my family, and I was like, hey, this is what this said. The majority of them who I had already talked to about the possibility that I might be, as soon as the
Hmm.
words came out of my mouth, they were like, yes.
Yeah. They can see that. Yeah.
And then so when I took the tests and they all came up yes, I was telling them and they were like, yeah. And that was about that. But then I had these other family members that when I told them, I had one just argue with me and just be like, no, 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 that's not you. I don't think
Right.
that's not you. And then I had this other one go, well, take it again. Just take it again and see what I want. I've taken it 3 times and it said the same thing. And they're like, no, just take it again. And I'm like, how do you think that makes me feel? When you're arguing
Hmm.
or you're acting like it's this bad thing? Because
Right.
as soon as for years, I was like, I don't know. Yes, no, maybe it's looking like
Hmm.
I found the tests and I took them, and it was just this complete load off. It's like,
Right.
man, I feel like my life would have been a lot easier. I would have be a lot more progressed from where
Yeah.
if I had known. And maybe I had known if there hadn't been such a stigma around it. Maybe if um because the stigma's gotten better. It used to be really bad. And
Right.
the parents don't even want to get their kids tested because heaven forbid they're different.
Right. Exactly. No, because a lot of people don't want to be considered different or they don't want their kids to. And I always encourage, though, the parents to just see what's to get them tested because you don't know. It could be maybe they are just delayed or they need to catch up and they're I hate to say normal, but maybe they are what your typical development is, and then that's all they need is just some time or some early intervention. But I also think it's a lot of times the person doesn't have a disability, does have a disability, and disability really isn't a bad thing or a dirty word, to use if that's what the person's comfortable with. And I think it becomes just a way of life. I was so lucky that because my parents had me tested when I was young, because they would tell me when I would come home saying, "Oh, everyone's telling me I'm not very smart," or they're saying this to me. And my mom and dad would say, "Well, you have a learning disability. Your brain is wired differently. You are smart. You just learn differently." And I had that validation. Now, I didn't believe it when I was very young, and I didn't think that I was good at anything. But eventually I started to see what they were saying was true.
That's so beautiful that you had that support system behind you. I can't say that I ever did.
Oh, it can be hard.
Yeah.
And I did have family members, some that didn't think that I had a disability, or some thought, oh, you're too smart, or if I really wanted to learn, I could. And not, but eventually they did get to see that it's just my brain's wired differently. There's some things I can't do, but there's things I can do as well.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you're incapable of anything. It
Mm-hmm.
means that
Right.
there
Yep.
you're not following the same path as everybody else is following. That's it. That's
Yep.
what it means. I
Yep.
like
No big deal.
those it, m- there's all these little things in the toy aisle. I have two small children, so I know all of the things, and they're like mystery boxes and mystery things, and they're like
Uh-huh.
tiny little balls and boxes, and you open them up, and my kids are always so excited. They're like, "Oh, I got a rare one." We're rare ones, and that's beautiful.
Um, yeah, it is to be a rare one. Yeah, because that's different isn't always bad. I mean, no, and it's a rare one, or it's something that, yeah, it's no, yeah, exactly. It's something that can make you different, but it's also not a bad thing to do that. There's a lot, just it's just a different perspective, different way of life, and that's okay.
Yes, and us talking about all of this is very important
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many people out there, not only the stigma that the average person has against people with disabilities or
Mm-hmm.
disorders, we call it attention hyper
Right.
attention def ADHD and autism. Those they both end with
Right.
disorder. And I had this friend once who was she was diagnosed ADHD when she was very young, and we were adults at this time, and we were very close friends for a very long time. And most people talk about wanting to do things, but they don't actually want to do the things. They just want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
doing the things. And it took me a really long time to figure that out. And
Yeah.
because I am just very logical. Like if you say you want to do the thing, okay, well let's go do the thing. And my toxic trait is that I'm going to hold you accountable to the thing that you said you want to do. Because I didn't realize that you don't actually want to do the thing. But anyway, she would be like, Savannah, I'm ADHD. I can't. I have a disorder. And I'm like, I don't know about that. So, like, there's a lot. So, not only is the stigma from people on the outside of these things, but there's also a stigma that people have against themselves if they have a diagnosed disability or disorder and they think that they're limited and then they just shut down and don't even try. And please don't do that.
No, exactly. And what the one piece of advice I could give people is not to give up. And the success doesn't always come in the package that you expect, but sometimes it comes in something even better.
Yes, and that's how it is across the board for everybody. It doesn't matter. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a diagnosis or if you don't have a diagnosis or if you need one or if you don't need one. It doesn't matter anything.
Yes.
You have your own lane that is completely different than everybody else's lane. And
Hmm.
society and culture thinks that it's tried to tell us that we should all more or less be in the same lane, and that is a complete and utter fabrication based on the ability to using the word control society
Hmm.
loosely, because
Right.
if you're the government in control, if you're the school system in control, it's very overwhelming to think that you have to navigate these millions of people
Hmm.
and help them figure out what's best for them. But we are learning now that there are better ways that are more
Yep.
flexible and more open-minded. The book that I'm reading right now on the unschooling thing is called Free to Learn,
Hmm.
and it talks about Sudbury schools, which I think are just a wonderful concept. And I'm not going to go into the details of that, but there are philosophies and systems available to us to support every individual, like unique individual, because everybody's unique and we have
Right.
what our lane is in order for us to be happy and fulfilled and find our purpose in the community that we've landed in.
Yes, exactly. Everybody, the world needs all kinds of thinkers and all kinds of people. And I think if we want to put everybody in a box that everybody thinks the same or does things the same, then we really miss out on just the differences and how everybody we need different people. I may not even be able to do math very well, but I do need somebody to be my accountant to be able to figure that out when we do taxes. I mean, I don't even attempt to do that on my own. Um, and just different people have those different abilities.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think maybe we need to just stop trying to box ourselves and label
Yes.
ourselves and use all of
Mm-hmm.
these limiting words to define ourselves.
Yes.
Instead, just focus on, again, it's self-exploration and trying new things and just follow
Yep.
your heart. Following your heart, how Disney princess of us.
Yeah,
It's true.
exactly.
Does it make you happy or does it not? If it makes you happy,
It,
follow it.
yep,
If it doesn't, find something else.
exactly. Because you got to put your heart into it. You have to follow your heart. If I did, I can remember whenever they were trying to find jobs for me when I did an agency that helped people with disabilities find employment. A lot of them wanted me, or people would tell me, "Why don't you go and do stock shelves?" I'm like, that would be really difficult for me, and I don't have the heart for it. Number one, and everybody had a lot of ideas, but just then they were not much help. When I did that agency, they had me circling jobs in the newspaper, and I remember thinking I could do this from home. And then they had like support groups and things because they were more geared towards people with intellectual disabilities. They say, "Oh, are you going to come to this outing or the support group?" And I said, "Well, I'm working at this time with a temp job." Oh, but I agree. You have to follow your heart. You have to love what you do. And that just carries you through. Even when you have a hard day, you know at the end of the day that you went in, you tried your best. And I just look for, did I get to help one person? Did I get a chance to make a difference in somebody's life today? And if I did that, then that's just makes my day.
Absolutely. Because again, the support system and the validation
Mm-hmm.
is invaluable. That's
Yep.
what we need more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And also with like yeah, people's suggestions are almost never helpful. They
Right.
um people love to give advice. And
They do.
a better mode, a better direction is doing less, honestly. Like just sitting there and listening and
Mm-hmm.
being like, well, how does that make you feel? That
Yep.
that is so important. If you have somebody, if you're listening to this and you have somebody in your life that anytime, everybody, it doesn't matter if they're struggling with this or that or have that label,
Mm-hmm.
that box or whatever, whatever. Each and every single one of us need more support and validation across the board. And the way we do that is not by unsolicited advice, you guys. It's by active listening and
Yep.
asking questions. How does that make you feel? Well, what did you think about when that happened? And because we all have this innate intuition within us that tells us what we like and what we don't like, but sometimes it takes talking to somebody about it to actually figure out in ourselves what we like and what we don't like.
Right. It's great to ask someone how that makes them feel, but I think, and true, I also think that it's helpful to, I always try to say, have you ever considered or have you heard? Because sometimes maybe somebody hasn't heard of a program, maybe somebody hasn't considered that. And then sometimes you find people, oh, no, they've heard of that program, they tried it, didn't work out, and that can be a really sensitive area. But I think before you say that, to preface, oh, have you heard about this, or have you ever considered? Or sometimes I would say, now I don't know if this will work for you,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we'll get, oh, my cousin has a learning disability and they're able to drive, why can't you? And that puts a lot of pressure on the person. But you might say, I don't know if this is going to help you out, but have you heard about this transportation system, or have you heard about this place that might help you with getting a driver's license? And that just opens that door of communication with them.
Yeah, we're really, again, the human brain wants to box
Yep.
things and categorize things for the sake of understanding. We all need to just get really comfortable with the fact that just assume you're not going to know anything and not understand
Yep.
anything
Mm-hmm.
ever. But people, they're like, oh, I know someone who's autistic, so they assume that they know exactly what autism
Yeah.
is and what that means. And it's nope, I could do 3 to 5 episodes on autism just on itself and how vast the differences are from person to person.
Yep,
It,
and you have three different episodes.
oh yeah,
With three different people. Yep, because everybody experiences it so different.
and every
And just
disability,
yep.
every disorder, every whatever
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis is exactly the same. At like that, I mean, like
Yeah,
as completely different across the board. No two.
yeah, yeah. No two are alike. Sometimes you might have similarities. I mean, obviously, there's enough that can diagnose somebody,
Mhm.
but everyone's going to experience it differently. I know people with learning disabilities that can drive. I know some that it's in their best interest, like mine, that they can't. I also know people with intellectual disabilities and autism that are able to drive too. And there's some who can't. It's varied on the person,
Mhm.
and everyone experiences it differently. And just sometimes the choices that they have to make just are just totally based as someone as an individual.
Mhm. Yeah, you really want to approach everything with a sense of
Mm-hmm.
unbounded curiosity.
Exactly. Be curious.
The
And
more
I
we,
think it's always interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to hear other people's experiences too. And then there's parts that we can relate to, and then there's definitely always something we can learn.
absolutely everybody we interact with has something to teach us.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for this hour. It's been really fun, and I love to talk about these types of things because I don't get to very often with people who get it. And people who think they get it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you, Savannah. It has been a pleasure speaking with you as well.
Yeah, is there anything you want to plug? You want to tell people like where they can find you or what you have or
You can find me at my blog, michellesmission.net, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well.
cool. And I'll link all of that nearby.
You.
Another big thanks to Michelle for coming and speaking with us today on this subject. And a big thanks to you guys for sticking it out and making it to the end. If you gained any sort of value from it or liked us as individuals, please give us a 5-star rating so that we can continue bringing these episodes to you. I really like my job. Every little bit of interaction goes a really long way for helping me continue to be able to do this job. Again, if you have any thoughts, opinions, or comments about what I should rename the show, let me know. And with that, thank you so much. I love you so much. Talk to you next week.